hear it for Gina Salah, the chant master. Thank you. So in the month of April, we have been celebrating the earth. We began the first Sunday in April by reflecting on the world soul, the anima mundi, and that is that the earth is a living, breathing being known as Gaia, and we are stewards of the earth. In other words, we are not just stewards, but we're obviously a part of the earth. We're the consciousness of the earth. We're the divine intelligence of the earth, and we have been called to a higher place. We have been called to love her, to heal her, and to care for her. We are right now living in very interesting times with some big issues up. We've got climate change, overpopulation, melting ice caps, you name it, we got it. We signed up for an interesting time to be born, don't you think? And every day, there seems to be another shooting or some kind of tragedy, isn't it? I mean, when I go and turn my computer on and look at the news, it's like, okay, what's up today? Again, we are living in interesting times, and I think that we're being called right now to live the teachings of unity, to live the teachings that Jesus and Buddha and our teachers have shared with us for thousands of years, and we need to move beyond intellectually understanding and grasping these teachings and actually practicing and living them. And I see that in our community. I see it more and more as people are awakening. And what it means to live the teachings is that when we hear that there's a bombing in Boston, we stop and affirm one presence and one power in the universe, God the good, and begin to call that forth and begin to look for that. As truth students, we are called to transform these kinds of experiences. We are called to transform the planet right now. We are here again for a reason. We are called to be alchemists. Now, an alchemist's dream is someone who can take lead and through a chemical process transform it into gold. How wonderful would that be, huh? To know how to do that? And the truth is, in a sense, we are metaphysical alchemists, because we can take a bad situation, we can take a negative situation, and we can transform it into something like gold. We can transform it into something pure. We can take a tragedy and we can transform it into inspiration and love. We are called, I think, to use the Shiva energy that we were singing about earlier. You know, in Hinduism, Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva are part of their trinity. Brahma is the creator, Vishnu is the preserver, and Shiva is the destroyer. And everything is always in that flux. Something is either being created and preserved and destroyed, and created and preserved and destroyed. But what comes out of the destruction is always new life. In unity, we believe that the Spirit of God indwells all beings, and it is through our thoughts, our words, our emotions, our actions that we can transform any dead condition in life. We can transform any experience that we have, again, becoming metaphysical alchemists, turning lead into gold. We see it all around us. I was reading an article about a dancer, a woman named Adrienne Haslett Davis, who was watching the marathon a couple of weeks ago in Boston, and she happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time, and when the bomb went off, it took her leg with it, and so she lost her leg 5 inches below her knee, and yet her calling is to be a dancer. she has been met with this lead experience, if you will, this toxic experience. And this is what she said about her calling as a dancer. She said, when I'm dancing, I don't feel the need to do or be anything else because my job is complete. This is who I am. And she said, I'm not going to let someone come along and steal my whole life. So I will dance again. And next year, though I've never been a runner, I plan to run in the marathon. She is taking a lead situation and she's turning it into gold. She is transforming it. So as we are celebrating Gaia this month, as we are honoring and celebrating the earth, I started to look at different people who are heroes, who are following that hero's journey, who are answering their call. And particularly, I was looking for someone who connected to the earth pretty well. And the person who came up for me right away was Paul Stamets, who lives in Olympia. How many of you know who he is? Quite a number. He has a talk on the TED Talk series, and he is a mushroom guy. He does experiments with mushrooms. In fact, if you've seen him, he kind of wears a little beret that looks like a mushroom, and he's kind of like a voice for the fungi. He is a voice for mushrooms. And he said when he was a kid, he couldn't look people in the eye. He was always looking down. And when he's looking down, what does he see? He sees mushrooms, he sees fungi. And he became so connected with it and had actual spiritual experiences around it. A friend of his is a musician, and his friend said that Paul opens himself up to information about fungi the way I open myself to a new song that is waiting to be found. So he's looking and opening himself to finding ways for these mushrooms to speak to him. So how does he fit into this alchemist? How does he fit into this turning lead into gold? Well, in this case, he found a way to turn fungi into healing, to a healing and transformative property. He believes that fungi can clean up fuel spills and provide a non-toxic alternative to insecticides. He thinks it could be a biofuel and, hey, maybe even cure smallpox. Who knows? So, in 1990 in Sequim, he was with a group who led an experiment with toxic waste. So what they did, and I have to look at my notes, is they grew oyster-mushroom mycelia on wood chips, and then they sprinkled the chips onto a pile of soil that was drenched in diesel and petroleum waste. Now, they had two other piles going with different stuff going so that they had, something to compare it to. And at the end of the 6 weeks, this is what he says when they returned to look at their piles. He said, all the other piles were dead, dark, and stinky. But our pile was covered with hundreds of pounds of oyster mushrooms. What was happening was these mushrooms were eating the toxins. They were taking the petroleum and they were taking the fuel and they were using it as food. So he did another experiment with it again, and this time what he noticed, because he gave the fungi only petroleum products for food. That's it. They didn't get anything else. And what he found was that not only did the mushrooms grow, but the spores attracted insects, which laid eggs, which became larvae, and the larvae attracted birds, which brought in seeds, and soon this pile of muck, this pile of toxic waste, was sprouting seeds. He said, our pile became an oasis of life. He's answering his call, and for him, his call is all about mushrooms. I think he's written a book called How Mushrooms Can Save the World. He is a true alchemist. He is taking pollution and he's transforming it into healing properties. He's taking the Shiva energy, the toxic waste, and he's bringing life to it. From the destruction comes new life. What if, the challenges that are facing our planet are found in mushrooms and other things that we don't even think about yet? And that's why it's so important that each one of us answers the call of who we are meant to be, because you don't know what you're going to stumble upon in pursuing your own passion, in pursuing that which excites you and brings you excitement, right? Or meaning in life. For him, it's mushrooms. The other person that I wanted to highlight today is a man by the name of Nek Chand, N-E-K, Nek Chand, and he lives in Chandigarh in India. My girlfriend had been in India a couple years ago, and she told me his story. In 1957, he's 80 years old now. In 1957, he began picking up garbage in the streets. He would go to construction sites and pick up broken toilets and put them on his bicycle. And then he began to take all this junk, all this garbage that he found, and he started to build rock walls and sculptures. He made children and animals and musicians and walls and you name it. He made it, and he got on a roll, and he started doing it on this stretch of land that was supposed to be government owned and not touched. Nothing was ever supposed to be built on it. So maybe he was a little OCD, but he couldn't stop. And he just kept creating one sculpture after another. And pretty soon he's covered in 18 years, he's covered about 17 acres. And then the authorities found out. And they're like, what are you doing? You're not supposed to put anything on this land. I mean, And he's like, he just wanted to create this sculptures, this rock garden. So for a while, it was popular. It was like, yes, it's kind of cool. But then he started to get national attention. People were like, hey, this guy's pretty cool. Look what he does. And the people in the village were like, hey, who is this guy? Who is this lowly guy to get national attention? Who does he think he is? We're going to get rid of this. We don't need this. And so the VIPs in town decided that what they were going to do is build a road right where all his sculptures were, and they were going to make it a road just for VIPs. So they're all ready. They start taking trees down. They start getting their bulldozers. And on the day that the bulldozers were to begin demolishing these sculptures, guess who showed up? Hundreds of children and hundreds of people stood and blocked the bulldozers with their bodies. So the authorities backed down, said, okay, you get to keep your sculptures. And it went on for a while. And then in '96, he went on a tour of the U.S. to present his gardens, trying to raise money. And while he was gone, the people who were helping and working with him were laid off. They were all fired. And when he came back, his sculptures had been vandalized. And it was a very deliberate thing. It wasn't like a random event. You could tell that it was deliberate. And this is what he said. He said the vandalism was not directed at the sculptures. The vandalism was directed at Nek Chand, as they very well know that my heart and soul lives in them. He poured himself into his creations, yeah? He talk about passion and calling. His calling is to create these sculptures, and he poured himself in, and he knew that when they destroyed it, they weren't destroying some inanimate object, they were destroying an extension of him. Well, it backfired, because after this, a foundation was formed, money poured in, and right now, it covers 40 acres. And volunteers are welcome to come and spend a month and to work with him. So he takes this, He's a true alchemist, isn't he? He takes this refuse, he takes this junk that nobody wants, and he transforms it into art. But there's more to the story. When India gained its independence in 1947, it resulted in a struggle between the new states of India and Pakistan, and it displaced 12.5 million people. For those of you who remember and have seen the movie, the Gandhi movie, remember there's that scene where these people are being uprooted and they're walking along this road and there's violence and there's all this horrible stuff that's happening as they're being displaced. And that this town where the sculptures are is right near where this road was. It's in Punjab. It's right near where it was. And what he did, so there's no count on it, but it's between hundreds of thousands and 1 million people lost their lives on that road while they were traveling to their new place. They lost their lives. And what he did, and I believe it's how he began doing what he's doing, is he walked along that road and he picked up their possessions that had been left behind, because either they were running to get away or because they were dead and the whole family was gone. And so you'll see statues made of nothing but bangles, of people's bangles that they have left behind. You'll see a whole wall that's made of just broken dishes and broken cups. He took this sorrow, this Holocaust, this tragedy that's along this road, and he began to turn it into something beautiful, something inspirational, something transformative. He is a true alchemist. He took lead, he took the toxic lead of violence and of anger, and he transformed it into something beautiful. Now, I don't expect that any of us are going to go out and build a rock garden that's 40 acres long, or maybe take mushrooms and save the world with them. But each one of us has a unique voice, and a unique calling. And we are living in times where we can't just sit back and talk about it anymore. We have to step up and take action and bring our gifts, just as he took sorrow and turned it into something beautiful. We teach every Sunday, there is but one presence and one power in my life and in the universe, God the good. And as children of God, made in the image and likeness of God, we have the power to transform lead into gold. We have the power to transform any dark situation into light. And we do it through our thoughts, our words, our emotions, and our actions. Yes, there are big changes happening in the world today. It's time to live the teachings. It's time for the alchemist who's hiding in you to step forward into the light. Just like Nek Chand, when he took the toxin of violence, turned it into art and inspiration, and when Stamets took literal toxins and transformed them into healing. We each have our place to serve. We each have our moment to transform. So whatever's happening for you in your life right now, if you have been dealt a Shiva experience, if you've been dealt a loss of some kind, if you've been dealt an illness, if you have been dealt something that you would not have chosen, it may not happen overnight, but we are called to transform it. We live in this beautiful planet, this anima mundi, the world soul. We are its expression, its divine intelligence, and its consciousness. And I believe we can step up to the task. Thank you.